Consumers did not suddenly turn against the high street. They simply began to realize something deeply uncomfortable. Everything is more expensive. Choices are fewer, and the familiar shops they once relied on are no longer guaranteed to be there when they need them. Nobody organized a boycott, no giant hashtag, no protests outside the town center. People just slowly changed their habits one by one. They bought less, compared prices more, spent more time online, and every time a familiar shop closed, they lost another nearby option. In 2024, Britain lost around 13,479 shops. That means more than 36 retail doors shutting every single day. In the same year, nearly 170,000 retail jobs disappeared. Those are not just statistics. They are staff losing wages, families losing income, and another darkened shopfront on the high street. And the frightening part is that this wave is not only sweeping away small independents, it is hitting names British people once assumed would last forever. DIY chains, beauty brands, fashion retailers, accessories shops, homeware stores, discount chains. Homebase had to sell itself. The Body Shop entered administration. Ted Baker vanished from the high street. WHSmith pulled back from town centres. Carpetright collapsed. Claire's shut stores across the country. One day you need a tin of paint, a bottle of shower gel, a birthday card, a pair of shoes for your child. You go to the shop like always, but the doors are shut. The sign has gone. If you still want the item, you have to travel further, pay more, or order online and wait for delivery. So which 15 major British retailers are in serious trouble, and why is the high street being pushed into such a brutal shakeout? Let's find out. Number 1. Homebase. Homebase used to be the place many British families went for ordinary everyday things: a tin of paint, a shovel, a few plant pots, a set of DIY tools. Nothing glamorous, nothing fancy, but necessary. When a shelf broke, the garden needed sorting, or the living room needed a fresh coat of paint, people expected there to be a Homebase nearby. And now that is no longer guaranteed. In November 2024, Homebase entered administration. CDS Superstores, the owner of the range, and Wilko bought the Homebase brand website, intellectual property, and around 70 stores, helping to save roughly 1,600 jobs. But another 49 stores and around 2,000 workers were still left facing uncertainty. On paper, it was a restructuring deal. In real life, it meant staff not knowing whether they would still have jobs the following month. It meant another major unit disappearing from a retail park. It meant people in some towns having to travel further just to buy basic DIY supplies. By 2025 to 2026, the picture became clearer. Homebase did not return in its original form. The brand still exists, but the old Homebase chain has largely been dismantled, divided up and folded into the range ecosystem. Homebase continues online. Some former sites have been turned into the range stores. Some locations now feature garden centres by Homebase. Put simply, Homebase has not vanished completely, but it is no longer the independent DIY giant it once was. It feels more like an old name being kept alive because it still carries value, but now living under someone else's roof. For customers, the feeling of being abandoned comes from this: when a familiar shop disappears. What vanishes is not just the sign above the door. It is the ability to quickly buy a tin of paint, a shovel, a plant pot, or a DIY item without having to search online. Compare prices, wait for delivery, and hope the courier does not crush the box. The reasons are not difficult to understand. Homebase was squeezed from both sides. On one side stood B&Q and Wix. On the other were discount retailers and online marketplaces. Large stores meant expensive rents, warehousing and staffing costs. After COVID-19, people were no longer as enthusiastic about home improvement projects as they had been when stuck inside four walls. Wallets became thinner, bills became larger. The dream of doing up the house this weekend slipped further down the priority list. By 2026, the Homebase name still remains, but now it feels more like a recycled legacy brand than a giant still standing strong on the British high street. Number 2. The Body Shop. If you have ever walked into The Body Shop store on the high street to buy a familiar bottle of shower gel, a tub of hand cream, or a last-minute little gift for someone, there is a good chance you bought more than just a product. You bought a feeling. The feeling that you are making yourself look good in a decent way. Nearly 200 stores in the UK, around 2,000 jobs. A brand born in Brighton in 1976, built on beautiful promises, cruelty-free fair trade, responsibly sourced ingredients, and beauty products close to nature. But in February 2024, the Body Shop in the UK fell into administration. There was none of the glamour of a once pioneering brand. No certainty that the familiar shop in the town centre would always be there. No promise strong enough to keep nearly 200 stores standing against the storm of cost debt and changing shopping habits. Customers used to believe in this brand. They bought the familiar body butter. They bought shower gels in moringa strawberry and shea. They bought Christmas gift boxes because they were easy to give and seemed ethical. Now many stores have disappeared. The lights on the high street have gone out, and local shoppers have to ask themselves, next time I want to buy this familiar product, where can I still go? Then the business used very clean words: restructuring, rescue. They sound neat, proper, very corporate. But in real life, 75 stores were planned for closure within 6 weeks. 489 retail jobs were cut, including head office. Nearly 800 staff were affected. Later, a consortium led by Aurea bought the brand, keeping 113 stores and around 1,300 jobs. They called that being saved. But being saved does not mean returning to what it once was. A brand that once made customers feel they were standing on the right side has now been reduced to a calculation of portfolio premises, costs, and profitability. The bitterest part is that the Body Shop did not struggle because people stopped caring about ethics. On the contrary, now everyone claims to be green, clean, decent, and against animal testing. The things that once made the Body Shop special are now all over TikTok, Instagram, and the packaging of hundreds of younger, cheaper, faster rivals. In the cost of living crisis, shoppers still like ethical brands. But they also have to pay electricity bills, rent, supermarket bills, and sometimes they are not betraying the Body Shop. They simply no longer have enough money to stay loyal. That is the most painful part. It is not some unfamiliar brand disappearing. It is a name that once sat inside British shopping habits, once promised that consumption could be better, and in the end was still dragged into the cold machine of the high street close stores. Cut jobs, sell the business. Shrink it down, then describe all of it in language that sounds far softer than the real loss. The Body Shop is still alive. But for many consumers, the sense of certainty has gone. And when even a brand that once stood for trust is no longer guaranteed to be there when you need it, the question left behind is deeply uncomfortable. Which familiar name will be the next to quietly leave the high street? Number 3. Ted Baker. Ted Baker did not disappear because British people suddenly stopped liking nice clothes. The problem is more painful than that. In a cost of living crisis, a brand that is a bit premium stylish but not truly essential can very easily be pushed out of the shopping basket. Customers may still like Ted Baker, but liking something is one thing. Taking out your wallet is another. When electricity bills, rent, and supermarket prices all rise, a smart shirt, a polished dress, or a tasteful gift suddenly becomes something to think twice about. And when shoppers have to think twice, they open their phones. They compare prices, they wait for the sale, they go on Vinted, they look at Zara, H and M Shein. The high street does not lose customers with one huge bang, but through millions of quiet I'll have another look first moments. In 2024, no ordinary designer label, the company operating Ted Baker in the UK and Europe, fell into administration. In April 2024, administrators announced the closure of 15 UK stores, affecting nearly 250 jobs. Of those, 11 stores closed before the 19th of April, with around 120 staff losing their jobs. A further 25 head office roles were also cut. On paper, it was restructuring. In real life, it was staff losing income. A shopping centre left with another empty unit. Local shoppers losing another familiar option when they needed something smart but did not want to step into the world of luxury. Then the slide continued. By August 2024, Ted Baker's remaining 31 UK stores were expected to close, putting more than 500 jobs at risk. Before that, 15 stores had already shut and 245 staff had been cut. In short, the brand name still exists, but Ted Baker's high street network has more or less been unplugged. Later, Ted Baker may continue through online sales wholesale or smaller concessions, but that is no longer the Ted Baker that once had a visible presence on the main shopping streets. The brand may remain, the logo may remain, but for ordinary shoppers, a familiar option has been pulled out of everyday life. And that is the real pain of the high street. It is not just losing one shop. It is gradually losing the choices that once made life feel a little easier. Number 4, WHSmith High Street / T.G. Jones. WHSmith did not collapse with a loud bang. It did something much colder. It left the high street. For many British people, WHSmith used to be a very familiar shop. Somewhere to buy a newspaper, a last-minute birthday card, a notebook, a pen, an envelope, a few small stationery items. Not as exciting as fashion, not as fragrant as beauty products, but the kind of shop many town centres were simply expected to have. Then the group looked at the high street, looked across to airports, railway stations and hospitals, and chose to keep the part that made better money. In March 2025, WHSmith sold its UK high street business to Modella Capital. The deal was initially valued at around £76 million and included around 480 to 500 high street stores. These shops were renamed T.G. Jones. WHSmith kept its travel retail business. It sounds very sensible, very corporate. On the high street, a customer might look at the price of a book and think, I'll just order it cheaper on Amazon. But at the airport, when you have forgotten your charger, forgotten your headphones, or need a bottle of water before your flight, WHSmith suddenly becomes a lifesaver, a bit expensive. Yes, but you're in a hurry and urgency does not haggle. The problem is that the part sold off was not just going through a gentle change of signage. By May 2026, T.G. Jones, the former WHSmith high street business, had begun a restructuring plan. The Guardian reported that up to 150 of around 450 T.G. Jones stores could close. 150 shops, not just a number. That is 150 high street locations that could go dark. Staff fearing job losses, local shoppers losing another place to buy cards, newspapers, books, pens, and the small, everyday items of ordinary life. WHSmith is not dead. It has simply chosen to live where the money is better: airports, railway stations, and hospitals. The part tied to the high street was sold, renamed, and wheeled into surgery. For the business, that is strategy. For many local communities, it feels like being left behind. A name that had stood on the corner for so long suddenly stepped away, leaving a gap that a new sign may not be able to fill. Number 5, Carpetright. There is a very honest saying in the cost of living crisis: if something is not completely broken, you try to keep using it. The old carpet is a bit worn. The living room floor looks a little tired. The stairs should probably have been redone last year. Leave it. Do it later. And that very do it later is what strangled Carpetright. Unlike clothes or beauty products, carpets and flooring are not things people buy on a whim. They are big expenses. They usually come with important moments: moving house, renovating, preparing for a baby, redoing the living room, or trying to make a home look a little less run down. But when interest rates are high, bills are rising, and supermarket prices are more expensive, many British families make the very practical choice: live with the old carpet for a while longer. And so a chain that once seemed fairly safe suddenly found itself in danger. In July 2024, Carpetright fell into administration. Tapi through CWHP bought 54 stores and 2 logistics centres, with 308 employees transferring over. It sounds like a rescue, but do not let the word rescue soften the story. Before that, Carpetright had around 273 stores. That means roughly 219 stores were not saved. Only 308 out of a total of 1,898 jobs were protected. Nearly 1,600 people lost their jobs. Those are not just numbers in a report. They are families losing income, retail parks left with more large empty units, people in many areas losing another place to look at carpet samples, ask for prices, book measurements, and arrange fitting. By early 2026, the case had still not truly closed. The old company, now called CPR Realizations Limited, remained in administration on Companies House, with the administrator's progress report filed on 25th February 2026. There was no new collapse, but the crack from 2024 was still there. The bitter thing is that British people have not stopped needing carpets. They simply no longer feel comfortable replacing them the way they used to. And when customers delay, a cost-heavy model like Carpetright immediately exposes its weakness: large stores warehousing staff fitting rent business rates. All of it still has to be paid, even when a customer only walks in, checks the price, and quietly decides, leave it, maybe next year. Carpetright, then, is not just the story of a flooring chain being pushed into trouble. It is the story of a Briton learning to put up with. More putting up with the old carpet, putting up with the unfinished home, putting up with nearby choices disappearing. And that is the worrying part. When even the things tied to the home are pushed to the bottom of the priority list, the high street does not just lose a shop. People lose another small piece of stability inside their own homes. Number 6. Matches. Matches is a rather painful reminder for anyone who thinks if shops on the street die, just move online and survive. But Matches proves the opposite. This was not an old-fashioned high street chain with Amazon breathing down its neck. Matches. Formerly, Matches Fashion was mainly an online luxury fashion retailer. It sold designer goods, sold lifestyle, sold the feeling of, I do not hunt for cheap things, I choose style. And then it still fell apart. In December 2023, Mike Ashley's Frasers Group bought Matches for around £52 million. It sounded like a deal that could open a new chapter, but only around 3 months later, in March 2024, Frasers put Matches into administration. The reason given was Cold Matches was not meeting its business plan and required a level of funding far beyond what Frasers considered reasonable. Put simply, it had barely been bought before the wallet started bleeding. The shock becomes even clearer when you look at jobs. Matches cut 273 jobs, more than half its workforce, after falling into administration. Before that, the business had around 533 employees across its head office and UK stores. The Financial Times also reported that Matches had made a pre-tax loss of around £70 million on sales of £380 million in the financial year ending January 2023, selling luxury goods and losing money in luxury style too. But behind those numbers, this is not just a story about rich people buying fewer expensive coats. It is also about staff losing their jobs. Warehouse workers, customer service teams, logistics staff, marketing people and tech employees being pulled into a collapse that from the outside people might assume would be lighter because it was online. Not at all. Online luxury is a very expensive machine. Stock is expensive. The photography has to look beautiful. The website has to be smooth. Delivery has to be fast. Returns have to feel premium. Marketing has to be constant. Customers are demanding, but they can also lose interest very quickly. A dress worth several £100s sitting in a warehouse is not just stock. It is money sleeping in silk and velvet. Matches, then, is not only a story about the luxury market. It is a warning to the whole retail industry. Online is not magic. It simply moves the pressure from rent to advertising, technology stock, and returns. For Matches, the lesson is very clear: if the business model is not healthy, the internet will not save you. It will only help you lose money with a better-looking interface. Number 7. Claire's. Claire's did not just lose stores, it lost a generation of customers. Years ago, Claire's was the place many girls in Britain walked into to buy very small things: a pair of sparkly earrings, a colourful hair clip, a bracelet, a keyring, a tiny bit of makeup. Not expensive, not too serious, but enough for a child to feel, I'm starting to have my own style. For parents, it was a safe shop on the high street. For teenagers, it was a rite of passage. For the town centre, it was a shop that brought young people into town. Then that ritual was dragged onto TikTok. In August 2025, Claire's UK/Ireland business fell into administration. At the time, the chain had 306 stores across the UK and Ireland, with more than 2,150 jobs placed at risk. This was not just an accessories brand in trouble. It meant thousands of workers, many of them part-time, many families relying on retail wages, suddenly being thrown into uncertainty. At first, it looked as though things might still be saved. In September 2025, Modella Capital bought most of Claire's UK/Ireland operations, including 156 stores, preserving around 1,000 jobs. But the remaining 145 stores were left with the administrator while options were explored. Sound familiar? Options are being explored. In retail language, that phrase often sounds like a promise made just before the lights go out. By April 2026, the picture had turned much darker. Claire's closed all of its remaining 154 standalone UK stores, with more than 1,000 jobs lost. The remaining stores in Ireland and Britain were also closed immediately, with around 1,300 employees made redundant. Stores closed. Staff lost their jobs. Parents lost another familiar shopping stop. The high street lost another reason for young people to visit. Claire's problem was not just debt or rent, it was a generational shift. Its customers now live in the world of Shein, Temu, Amazon, and TikTok Shop. A hair clip can appear in a video in the morning, sell out by lunchtime, and be out of fashion by evening. Staff in physical stores have not even had time to rearrange the shelves. Claire's once sold accessories. But deeper than that, it sold the teenage feeling of choosing who you wanted to be for the first time. And when that feeling moved onto phone screens, the high street did not just lose a shop. It lost another piece of its own youth. Number 8. River Island. River Island is not dead, but it is having to shrink itself in order to survive. And for ordinary shoppers, that is the worrying part. Because River Island is not some unfamiliar brand. It is the kind of fashion shop people know on the high street and in shopping centres. Coats, dresses, jeans, workwear, going out clothes. Not too expensive, not too cheap. Just enough for many British people to think, if I need something a bit decent, I'll pop in and have a look. But in the cost of living crisis, that a bit decent has suddenly become hard to sell. According to Sky News and The Guardian, River Island plan to close 33 stores while also seeking rent reductions at 71 others. More than 1,000 jobs could be affected during the restructuring process. The company calls it optimizing the store network. But in real life, it means staff worrying about losing their jobs. A town centre losing another familiar fashion shop. Shoppers having fewer choices when they want to buy a new outfit without going straight to luxury, but also without wearing something so cheap it feels almost disposable. River Island's difficulty lies exactly in where it sits in the middle. Not as cheap as Primark. Not as fast as Shein or TikTok Shop. Not premium enough like Rice or Massimo Dutti. Not essential enough for British families to prioritise when bills are weighing heavily. Customers still like nice clothes. But liking does not mean buying. They walk into the shop, look at the price, try on a dress, think, that's quite nice. Then they walk out, open their phone and find something similar for half the price delivered to their door, with returns easier than explaining it to their wallet. And just like that, River Island loses not only one order, it also loses the habit of people going into town to buy clothes. That is a very high street illness. High rent, high business rates, lots of staff fashion stock that has to move quickly while shoppers are becoming fewer and harder to convince. A quiet shop is not just a weak sales point. It is a cash machine draining money every month. River Island, then, is the story of mid-market fashion being squeezed hard. The brand has not collapsed, but it has to close stores, renegotiate and shrink down. And for consumers, the pain lies here. Another familiar choice is being pulled out of everyday life. The high street does not disappear in one night. It wears away one shop at a time. Number 9. Quiz clothing. Quiz is not the kind of fashion people wear every day like a white t-shirt or a basic pair of jeans. It relies heavily on occasion wear clothes for parties, weddings, bars, birthdays, festivals, the moments when shoppers are willing to spend a bit more to feel they stand out. But when the cost of living rises, the things people buy for fun, to look good, to photograph well, are often the first to be cut. To put it bluntly, electricity rent and supermarket bills do not care whether you have a new dress for a party. In February 2026, Quiz Clothing appointed joint administrators. Reuters reported that the move led to 109 job losses at its Glasgow head office and Bells Hill distribution centre, while the online store was shut down. However, around 40 UK stores and 7 concessions in Ireland continued trading while administrators assessed options for the business. What is notable is that by May 2026, the story had still not ended immediately. The Industry.Fashion reported that all 40 Quiz stores remained open in May, with new stock still being brought into shops to support the clearance of all remaining stock. In other words, Quiz has not turned the lights off straight away, but those lights now feel like the fitting room lights at the end of the day still on. But everyone knows staff are about to say the store is closing shortly. Quiz's problem lies in speed and price. A party dress today is not only competing with the shop next door, but also with Shein, ASOS, TikTok Shop, Vinted, and all kinds of platforms where customers can buy an outfit that is good enough for one photo at a much lower price, with occasion where many people do not need something that will last 10 years. They only need to wear it once, look fine in a picture, and move on. Quiz therefore shows a rather bitter truth. Not every fashion brand gets into trouble because its designs are bad. Sometimes they simply lose because customers no longer want to pay high street prices for an Instagram moment that lasts a few seconds. Number 10. The original factory shop. The original factory shop should have been the kind of chain that stayed healthy when people tightened their spending. Because when everything becomes more expensive, shoppers do not stop shopping. They simply change tactics. They buy less for status. They switch to buying in ways that hurt their wallets less. And in many small towns across Britain, TOFS used to be a very practical place. Clothes, homeware, beauty products, toys, seasonal goods and branded products at softer prices. The problem is selling cheaply does not mean surviving easily. The original factory shop was founded in 1969. Its model was especially familiar in smaller town centres, where people do not always have a large shopping centre or many shopping choices close to home. For many local shoppers, this was the kind of store they could pop into for a few essentials without feeling as though their wallet was under attack. But then even that discount chain was dragged down by the storm of costs. In January 2026, the original factory shop appointed administrators. The chain had 137 stores and around 1,180 jobs placed at risk. Sky News also reported that around 1,200 jobs were under threat. On paper, that is insolvency. In real life, it is staff losing their jobs. Families losing income. Many small towns losing another affordable shop. People having fewer choices in the middle of the cost of living crisis. What makes it more bitter is that Toffs had only been bought by Modella Capital in 2025. Before any spectacular turnaround could happen, the chain had to call in Interpath to handle the process. Before that, the business had reported a pre-tax loss of around £5.6 million in the financial year, ending March 2024. By April 2026, the situation had become far heavier, all 137 UK stores, and the head office were closed with around 1,180 employees made redundant. This is the part that makes consumers angriest. Even the cheap shop is no longer guaranteed to be there when they need it. In an age when bills are rising, rent is rising, and supermarket baskets are rising too. People are losing yet another place to buy affordable everyday goods. Toffs shows a rather brutal truth. Low prices can bring customers into a shop, but they do not automatically pay the rent, staff wages, logistics, and business rates. And when even a discount chain cannot survive, ordinary shoppers have every right to ask if even the affordable shops disappear, what exactly is the high street leaving behind for them? Number 11. Muji Europe. Muji is a slightly different case on this list. It does not enter the story with the loud drums of bankruptcy, no immediate wave of mass store closures, and no everything must go signs shocking passers-by. Muji entered crisis in true Muji-style minimal quiet, understated so much so that even its restructuring looked rather tidy. This Japanese brand is known for homeware stationery, basic clothing, cosmetics, storage items, and small products that make shoppers believe that just one more beige plastic box will make their lives more organized. Muji sells minimalism with no loud logos, no brand shouting. A pen, a shirt, a wooden shelf all quietly whisper, "I am simple, but I have taste." But simplicity does not mean financial immunity. On the 8th of April 2024, Muji Europe Holdings Limited fell into administration. EY confirmed that Simon J. Edel and Alexander P. Williams had been appointed joint administrators. Immediately afterwards, the administrators completed the sale of the business and certain assets to Muji Europe Limited, including the transfer of Muji's European subsidiaries and all employees. Retail stores and e-commerce operations across Europe continue to trade. This is important. Muji Europe is not a story of doors slamming shut and disappearing. According to The Times, before entering administration, Muji had 6 stores in London and 1 in Birmingham in the UK. The company said the process was part of a planned strategic restructuring and had no immediate impact on store staff or day-to-day operations. Muji's problem lies here. Even a strong identity is not necessarily enough. Minimalism was once its point of difference, but now IKEA, Amazon, Uniqlo, local interiors brands, and countless marketplaces can all sell things that look minimalist too at more comfortable prices. Customers may love Muji, but that love does not always beat the cost of living. Muji then is like a very beautiful storage box that now has to reorganize what is inside. Not noisy, not a spectacular collapse, but enough to remind us that even a brand with a clear philosophy has to restructure when the market changes the rules of the game. Number 12. Hobbycraft. Imagine it is Sunday evening and your child says, "I need model-making supplies for school tomorrow." You open the drawer. No colored paper, no glue, no cardboard. The scissors are as blunt as your weekend mood. Years ago, many British families could simply run out to Hobbycraft, buy a few things, come home and sort it out. No need to become a craft expert. Just save one evening from turning into a cardboard disaster. But that kind of convenience is becoming less certain. Hobbycraft does not only sell wool paints, baking supplies, craft paper, or party decorations. It sells a small breathing space in life, making a birthday card, knitting a scarf, decorating a child's room, preparing a party by hand instead of buying everything ready packaged. It sounds very warm, until rent walks into the room. In March 2025, Modella Capital Hobbycraft's new owner began reviewing a restructuring of the chain. At the time, Hobbycraft had around 124 stores and 2,400 employees. By April 2025, the plan had become clearer. It was preparing a CVA expected to close at least 9 stores, while another 18 stores had to renegotiate rent with landlords. CVA sounds like a clean financial term, but for a retail park it can mean another empty unit. For staff it means shifts being cut. For parents it means that next time they need glue-coloured paper or birthday party decorations, they have to go online and pray delivery arrives in time. Retail Gazette reported that the restructuring could see up to 126 roles cut, including at the Bournemouth head office and the Burton-on-Trent distribution centre. The company said the plan was intended to protect at least 99 stores and around 1,800 remaining jobs. That is how a business says cut one part to keep the rest alive. And what do shoppers hear? Fewer shops, fewer choices, less convenience. The problem is not that British people have stopped enjoying crafts. The problem is that in the cost of living crisis, hobbies have to stand behind rent, electricity bills, and supermarket costs. A box of acrylic paints may be beautiful, but the energy bill does not care about art. Hobbycraft then has its own particular pain. It does not sell what is essential for survival, but it sells the things that make life feel less dry and mechanical. When shops like this shrink, the high street does not just lose goods, it loses some of the small reasons people still want to go out, make something with their hands and feel that life still has a little joy. Number 13. Select fashion. Select fashion has fallen into the most dangerous part of fashion today, not expensive enough to be called premium, but not cheap enough to stop customers thinking twice. It was once an affordable women's wear brand familiar in many towns, selling easy-to-wear, easy-to-style pieces for shoppers who wanted something new, without digging too deeply into their wallets. It sounds reasonable, but the problem is that in the age of ultra-fast fashion, affordable is no longer a reliable shield. Out there, Primark sells cheaply on the street, Shein and Temu sell even cheaper on the phone, Zara and H&M chase trends quickly, while Vinted has made second-hand clothing feel both money-saving and environmentally conscious. Select stands in the middle of all this, like someone haggling at a market, while everyone around them is live streaming a clearance sale. According to the Centre for Retail Research, Select Fashion entered a CVA in 2024, with plans to close 35 of its 169 stores. By 2025, the situation had worsened as Select moved into creditors' voluntary liquidation. According to the same data, around 1,800 employees were affected. This was no longer just a case of a few slow-selling shops being optimized. It was a sign of a model being squeezed from several sides by the market. Select's difficulty is that affordable fashion today does not only need to be cheap. It has to be cheap, fast good, in photos on trend, easy to deliver, easy to return, and constantly feel new. A physical store chain trying to do all of that has to carry rent staff stock and a very high speed of product turnover. Meanwhile, online rivals can push out new items, constantly test trends with data, and place products directly in front of customers on social media. Select then is not just a name falling off the high street. It is a reminder that being moderately cheap is no longer attractive enough if on the other side of the screen there is something cheaper, faster, and newer every day. In the current fast fashion war, standing in the middle is not a safe position. Sometimes it is the place that gets crushed by both ends of the market first. Number 14. Bodycare. In September 2025, Bodycare fell into administration. A chain selling shampoo, shower gel, affordable cosmetics, and low-cost personal care products, the kind of things people seem always to need, eventually could not survive the high street storm. After that, all 147 stores in the UK were gradually closed during 2025. 147 stores. Not just 147 signs taken down, that is 147 affordable shopping stops disappearing from the high street. Staff losing their jobs. Many local shoppers losing another nearby place to buy personal care products. What makes this frustrating is that Bodycare did not sell luxury goods. People did not go in there to buy a glamorous dream. They went in to buy a bottle of shampoo, a tube of cream, a bottle of shower gel, a low-cost cosmetic item. Small things, yes, but in the cost of living crisis, those small things matter a lot. Because when every bill is rising, consumers need cheap and nearby shops even more. But even that cheap and nearby option is no longer guaranteed. In October 2025, a group of investors led by Charles Denton bought the Bodycare brand and intellectual property. The plan was to reopen around 30 to 50 stores from the first half of 2026, prioritizing the Northwest depending on negotiations with landlords. It sounds like a comeback, but look closely. From 147 stores down to a plan for 30 to 50 stores. That means Bodycare may live on, but much smaller than before. Many town centres that once had a Bodycare may never see it return. And that is when people realise how familiar Bodycare used to be. A shop with no glamour. No big ethical story like the Body Shop. No premium feel like a beauty boutique. Just somewhere people could quickly pop in to buy a few personal care items without hurting their wallet. The problem lies in the model. Low prices are an advantage, but margins are thin. Rent still has to be paid, business rates still have to be paid. Competition is everywhere. Boots, Superdrug, supermarkets, Amazon discount shops. Bodycare then is not just a beauty chain in trouble. It is a more uncomfortable warning in an age when everything is becoming more expensive. Even the affordable shops that make everyday life a little easier can be pulled off the main street. Number 15. Laybuy. Laybuy is not a shop on the high street. It sits somewhere more hidden just behind the checkout button. And that is what makes it worth talking about. In the cost of living crisis, when prices rise and wallets become thinner, buy now, pay later sounds like a small escape route. An £80 shirt suddenly becomes 4 payments of £20. It looks lighter. But the debt does not disappear. It is simply broken into smaller pieces. In June 2024, Laybuy fell into receivership in New Zealand and Australia. In the UK, local reports said Laybuy UK stopped accepting new transactions and entered the administration process, while around 300,000 UK users were still reminded to continue paying off existing balances. Put simply, the service may stop. But the money still has to be paid. By August 2024, Klarna had bought Laybuy's assets in New Zealand and announced it would restart the service in that market. Laybuy once had around 500,000 New Zealand users and was connected to more than 10,000 merchants. Laybuy shows that the retail crisis is not only found in shops going dark on the street, it also sits behind the shopping basket payments, consumer credit, financial technology. For ordinary shoppers, the pain is this: when everything becomes more expensive, they need ways to cope. But even the promise of buy now, pay later is no longer guaranteed. In this era, it is not only shops that disappear. Even the ways consumers try to make life feel more manageable are beginning to wobble. So out of these 15 names, which brand surprised you the most? Don't forget to share the video and subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the business stories behind brands that once seemed impossible to bring down.